My name is Nick Sadowski, and I am a first-year student attending Elon University, which is a private school located centrally in North Carolina. Prior to Elon, I attended Hickory High School, which is located in Hickory, North Carolina, which is approximately 2 hours west of Elon. I have been taught under the Hickory public school system for nearly 17 years, and through my experiences, my educational opportunities have directly been affected by my underfunded public education in North Carolina. From 2008 to 2012, North Carolina experienced an educational recession. In the budget year for 2011 to 2012, North Carolina predicted a multi-billion-dollar loss, which would diminish the funds that public education would later receive because North Carolina's budget previously allocated a third of their funds toward education. Therefore, government legislators were forced to make significant cuts in the education category to have the most budgetary impact. Legislators began laying off thousands of teachers and cutting more than $400 million from the University of North Carolina's budget system. Within 2 years, the North Carolina state legislators provided $500 million less than the public schools needed. Finally, in the budget year for 2014 to 2015, North Carolina was still spending $100 million less than it had before the economic crisis. This funding loss is even more alarming because, during the same time period, North Carolina's public school system added roughly 150,000 more students, so per-pupil expenses have declined even more drastically. How can one help to gain more state funding for public education? If students, teachers, and community leaders launch more marches and rallies, increasing awareness and involving larger numbers of committed citizens, then state legislators holding proper authority may consider revising budget reductions for education. For example, in Arizona, over 50,000 educators and their supporters marched toward the Capitol in Phoenix. It was the biggest teacher strike in the state's history. The participants carried red banners, signs, and wore red t-shirts as they chanted, "Red for Ed." For weeks, the educators had been fighting for increasing teacher salaries by 20% for the next school year. Finally, the protests ended after 6 days with Arizona's governor, Doug Ducey, signing a bill that added money for a 9% increase in teacher salaries. Although teacher salaries did not receive a 20% increase desired, the effect of raising awareness and joining together through a statewide march proves to be potentially financially rewarding. One may believe that Arizona state legislators raise the percentage of money from the state's budget that is distributed toward teacher salaries only because their state has some of the worst credentials regarding public education in the country. However, I firmly believe that North Carolina's chance to make significant changes through marches is viable after reading of the well-publicized and organized rallies in West Virginia that recently led to public education victories. West Virginia's educators formed together to lead a 9-day strike that involved keeping schools shut for 277,000 students and 35,000 employees. The strike ended with West Virginia's governor, Jim Justice, signing a bill to deliver a 5% pay raise to public teachers. Then, on Wednesday, May 16, 2018, the North Carolina Association of Educators hosted a statewide walkout that involved thousands of teachers dressed in red t-shirts to march through Raleigh. The teachers demanded a raise along with more funding for education. However, unlike results from Arizona's march and West Virginia's walkout, nothing resulted from North Carolina's movement. The effect of no change is mainly due to low participation. Raising awareness to authoritative people cannot be done without a large mass of teachers, students, and community leaders who truly desire change for the better. How do higher teacher salaries affect us? According to a New York Times article, Big Study Links Good Teachers to Lasting Gain by Annie Lowry, the quality of individual teachers matters over the long term. Lowry quotes a longtime researcher of education policy, Eric Hunschuk, as stating that the variations or differences between really good and really bad teachers have lifelong impacts on children. She further notes that economists estimate that a single classroom's lifetime earnings could be raised by approximately $266,000 by hiring an average teacher salary over a poor one. Taking this a bit further, if that teacher only works for 10 years, then the gain is $2.66 million. Consider the impact if there are 30 classrooms in this school, employing better teachers through higher pay incentives. More funding is needed to retain better teachers and higher participation in teacher-led rallies is easily achieved when the community is lightened on what is at stake. Another possible solution to raise public education funding is the legalization of medical and recreational marijuana. For example, in Washington, a Republican lawmaker proposed last year that all the sales revenue, more than $700 million a year, go toward education. In Colorado, 110 public schools have accepted funds from marijuana taxation through a BEST grant. Revenue from a separate 15% retail sales tax supports early literacy, school health, bullying prevention, and dropout prevention programs. According to Gavin Eakins, who earned a PhD in economics from George Mason University, a mature industry could generate up to $28 billion in tax revenue for federal, state, and local governments, including $7 billion in federal revenue, $5.5 billion from business taxes, and $1.5 billion from income and payroll taxes. North Carolina state legislators must continue working toward new bills with increasingly more data about the use of cannabis if they want to see North Carolina progress past the decriminalization stage toward recreational and medical usages. If passed, then government tax collections would create a prolific revenue source from the largest cash crop industry in the country, which would be spent on education and improve North Carolina economically. However, many people believe that utilizing a drug to fund education for children is considered morally wrong. But is it really? The United States has utilized tobacco industry profits for years to fund children's education, despite tobacco products being scientifically linked to cancer and other potentially deadly respiratory issues. Marijuana comes from the cannabis plant, which is not scientifically linked to mortality. No one has ever died strictly from smoking cannabis. Legalization of cannabis would offer cities and towns savings for not having to spend time searching for individuals using an illegal drug, while simultaneously providing income from the tax revenue generated from legal sales. By bringing this in the public eye, legislators could offer more controls to the use of marijuana, similar to the greater control of alcohol consumption after Prohibition. Since marijuana in North Carolina is only currently available through the black market, production is not governed. Legalizing cannabis will bring regulations under the FDA, requiring the ingredients to be stated. One of the greatest fears about marijuana is the lack of control in its composition. Although cannabis is not considered an addictive narcotic, quite often is it mixed with hidden substances that can do great harm to the user. Legalization would prevent this occurrence and protect users from the absence of control. This theory mainly relates to marijuana intended for recreational use, but it also has many medicinal uses like treatment for glaucoma, seizures, pain relief, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety. Legalization for marijuana for therapeutic use alone could generate substantial new tax revenue in North Carolina. One final argument for the legalization of marijuana is the adaptability of this cash crop to North Carolina's farmland that is laying waste due to abandoned tobacco farms. Across the state, small rural farms have stopped growing tobacco due to decreased demand for their product, coupled with a higher cost for extraction. The most considerable part of tobacco farming has shifted toward large mass production farms. This small rural farmland is fertile to grow marijuana so that legalization would re-energize the agricultural roots of North Carolina. State and local economies stand to gain great economic value from the legalization of marijuana, creating a massive windfall to divert to public education while also supporting safety to recreational users and comfort to medical patients. Many recent solutions have created greater financial gaps. In hopes of addressing the education crisis, many citizens believe that implementing charter schools will help. However, charter schools pull funding from the same education budget as public schools. Also, according to the Washington Post, the legislature took away cap restrictions on charter schools, which have grown by nearly 50% in number and doubled their student enrollment since 2010. Therefore, public schools funds will decrease, resulting in a lack of growth and performance rates statewide. Also, the North Carolina Education Lottery was established in 2005, with a promise that proceeds will be used to supplement North Carolina education's budget not as a replacement for government funding. Logan Smith, who is a communications director at Progress North Carolina, argues that funding has buffeted North Carolina's education budget, but that it was a bait and switch tactic, as education lottery money has recently been used to replenish state education budget cuts. Therefore, rather than supporting education funds since its beginning, lottery proceeds have only served to fill in gaps created by budget cuts, resulting in a net negative growth in education funding. As long as North Carolina's public education ranks in the lowest fifth nationwide, our state will lose population to fill our jobs, and ultimately we will lose businesses, and our economy will fall further behind. We have to take steps to increase funding for North Carolina's public education system. One way that high school students could recruit youth participation is by organizing new clubs at public schools. The ultimate goal is to enlighten students of the effects quality teachers will have on their futures, and to motivate them to seek out and participate in teacher-led rallies. Additionally, everyone must demand change. Join the North Carolina Association of Educators and get involved with statewide walkouts or any other volunteer opportunities. However, there is greater potential financial benefit for supporting the legalization of recreational and medical marijuana, so this option stands as one of the few solutions that can generate enough revenue to alleviate the long-term debt public education faces. One of the most explicit paths to support the public education is to go vote in state and local elections, and to elect officials that will work toward legalizing the use of marijuana while also putting public education as a high priority on their political agenda. Use Ballot Ready to learn which candidate supports the legalization of marijuana and also supports the increase in public education funding.